So what's up YouTube? So there's a bunch of updates on this one since the last one. Um, let's talk about playlist first. So there is a playlist hopefully this year unless it is cancelled again. Um, August or September, sorry, September 20, September 2nd to the 4th of 2022. Um, if I were to go, hopefully, and I'm fixing my money issue now, which will lead into now kind of stuff. I believe August 28th, a fellow former YouTuber, new nower, would be with me. I would get in that Tuesday or Wednesday. So be there from Wednesday to the 4th and leave on a Monday. I would request another 2 weeks like I did prior. That I didn't use, unfortunately, when I stayed home for it. And I did have my COVID swab test, so hopefully in the next 24 to 40 hours I'll have the results. Which, for me, I'm fine. Because I don't feel icky, more sleepy than anything, but it's life. But I did recently get a raise, which is nice. I'm at $18.65 an hour due to our union, and also got a retro. I will get my new vacation hours soon for this coming year, so I know how many hours I have to use. But leading into you now, I did have 2 accounts with most of you know who follow me on here now. Because I had issues with my credit card and debit card at one point. I closed it out. I'm doing a new one. And for some reason, I don't know if it was the security code or just the card in general, they consider a credit card instead of a debit card, and they blocked the spending for some reason on both accounts. And one of them someone had said I had enough to get my 3rd crown, which I wasn't going to use it for that. So anyways, I'm down to 1, and that new one for you now would be OAMIGO _ 52609. Fan me up. Coin me. I definitely need coins. So that way I can level up, which would be awesome. And at some point I will do a secondary account when I have the funds to do so. But I am on vacation now for a week. I'm getting another one in March, and I'm getting 2 weeks for August and September, and then hopefully not using any more after that. But so far this year's turned out very not kosher. But as always, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok. That's another stuff I don't remember. But IG, hit me up at Derek Curly 4040. Twitter, either Derek Curly 10 or Derek Curly 1. The 10 is my main, because it used to be part of it now, which is not a different one attached to it. And anyways, let's get on with the show, right? Right, so preface this first. All these stories are not current. I got this one and 2 more to go through, and then I'll bring current stories up as far as the posts. But anyways, the first one is the IRS asking for a raise. Well, I need a raise, and they people the name machines at work, right? So at the time, President Biden had proposed $80 billion budget increase for the IRS so to help the agency hire additional 87,000 people to people. The administration says that this will help the agency catch tax cheats and paraphrasing here, make them a scarier force to be reckoned with. The head of the IRS, Charles Rettich, has been asking for more money for months. The agency says that 15% of taxes go to unpaid, and they amounted to $600 billion in 2019 alone. The country badly needs tax revenues to pay for all the spending the president has committed to, and Reddit says he can go out and get it with a stronger workforce. The president's proposal says that the IRS needs new technology to update outdated finance systems and help for the 1.4 billion cyber attacks the U.S. experiences annually. Yikes. The plan would also swell the ranks of the IRS employees by about 10% per year. Republicans have traditionally pushed back on all budget increases and expressed concern over increasing the IRS power, like everything on the president's wish list. This is pending congressional approval, and that is not a sure thing. Google My Ranch is the title. Google rolled out an app that can diagnose skin conditions using your phone's camera. It can also diagnose issues with hair and nails. Okay, that gives me the heebie-jeebies, but I can say how it is useful. It could help people find the right doctor or simple ointments for common problems. The problem is that only 3.5% of the people the app used for its learning algorithm had black or brown skin. Dermatologists say that this could lead to some misdiagnosis for people who do not have light skin, like I do. Google published a study showing that the app had 87.9% accuracy in identifying skin conditions for black people, which was higher than any other ethnicity. The company says that the entire field of dermatology underserves darker skinned people, and this research is meant to bridge the gap, not accelerate it or exacerbate it. Mhm. Okay, so clean up your sky, sorry, for any wondering. The first cleanup crew was sent into space in March in an effort to retrieve what humans have left behind. It's a big task. Currently, there are 3,000 inactive satellites and 900,000 pieces of Earth-made debris just chilling out there in the final frontier. Space debris can travel at 25,000 miles per hour, so it is dangerous pollution. The ELSA-D mission is a pilot program to capture and safely remove this debris from orbit using magnetic retrieval. The craft launched from Kazakhstan and was created by a Japanese company called astroscale. The rocket is currently running tests in which it captures space debris deliberately. Deliberately loses it. And then tries to recapture it again. The goal is to collect all the space junk and then send it back to Earth, where it will burn up upon re-entry into the atmosphere. Surely someone has thought to study on all the effects of the Earth's atmosphere, right? Please say yes. Mountain of masks. Our world is littered with medical protective gear, but maybe we can make something of this. Researchers in Australia are trying to use recycled masks to make roads in Britain. One company turns them into backyard furniture. In France, another company turns them into car carpets. In the US, there's an effort to turn them into outdoor benches. The masks have to quarantine for a week before they're handled and then sterilized with ultraviolet lamps. The world is going through 129 billion disposable masks per month, and most cities have no way to collect them for recycling. In France alone, 40,000 tons of masks were thrown out last year because no one knows where to put them for recycling. If these companies can solve the collection problem, they can turn lemons into lemonade. Single-use plastic. Trust me, this is more environmental flaw than anything. Trust me. A new report says that more than half of the world's single-use plastic comes from just 20 companies. This from the Mindero Foundation with the London School of Economics and the Stockholm Environmental Institute. Environmentalists typically place plastic blame on soda companies, but this study shows that petrochemical companies that make polymers are the bigger problems. ExxonMobil is the biggest single-use plastic offender, responsible for 5.9 million tons of global plastic waste, followed by chemical company Dow and Sinopec. Funding for these companies comes from just 20 global banks, including Barclays, HSBC, and the Bank of America. More than 30 million in loans have been pumped into these companies since 2011. The study says that putting pressure on these companies is not enough. We must also appeal to the businesses and financial leaders that back them if we want them to change. Despite the public opinion against single-use plastic, the report estimates that there will be a 30% increase in global throwaway plastic production in the next 5 years. White House counters with $1.7 trillion infrastructure proposal, GOP unimpressed. The big deal. This is the past deal. I don't know which one this one is by brain. But the White House counters with $1.7 trillion infrastructure proposal in GOP talks. White House officials are presenting a $1.7 trillion counterproposal to Republicans on Friday in pursuit of a bipartisan deal on infrastructure, reducing the price tag of President Biden's infrastructure proposal by $550 billion. Quote, in our view, this is the art of seeking common ground. White House Press Secretary Jim Psaki told reporters at a briefing Friday the proposal exhibits a willingness to come down in size, giving some areas that are important to the president, while also staying firm in areas that are most vital to rebuilding our infrastructure and industries of the future. Now, breaking down the counteroffer. According to a 3-page memo obtained by the Hill outlining the counterproposal, the White House is offering to reduce funding for broadband expansion to $65 billion to match the Republican offer, spearheaded by Senator Shelley Moore, Capitol, representative of West Washington, West Virginia. The new measure also reduces proposed investments in roads, bridges, and other major infrastructure projects from $159 billion to $120 billion, which is still more than double the $48 billion originally proposed by Republicans. The reception, while not good, the offer is still well above the price tag offered by Republicans and was received tepidly on Capitol Hill, suggesting that a bipartisan compromise remains out of reach. Capitol spokesman called the counteroffer well above the range of what we can pass in Congress with bipartisan support, and said the White House and Senate Republicans continue to disagree on the definition of infrastructure, the magnitude of proposed spending, and how to pay for it. Based on today's meeting, the groups seemed further apart after 2 meetings with the White House staff than they were after one meeting with President Biden, Capitol spokeswoman said. Dumbarton Rail. So if you're local, which I am of California, I don't remember ever being on that bridge, but if some of you in California have driven on it, you know you've seen this. So Dumbarton Rail, a bridge to the past. A billboard size sign off Middlefield Road a few blocks from Costco proclaims Redwood Junction. This person wondered, why does it say Redwood City Junction? Well, then he remembered, or she, that Redwood City has gone through a variety of names: Embarcadero, Nelsville, and Redwood. Redwood Junction, he found out, is a neighborhood of about 2,600 people, and that it is literally a junction of train tracks. There was a time when the tracks went across the bay on the now long abandoned Dumbarton Rail Bridge. Backers of the plans to restructure to resurrect the span looked forward to the day when commuters no longer clog freeways with cars, but move from one place to another by train. Their high hopes of nothing compared to those who hailed the opening of the Dumbarton span in 1910. The distance from Oakland to San Francisco by the way of the bridge is 26 miles, less than the byway of San Jose. Verona Colburn wrote in a long column in July 4, 1910, Redwood City Democrat. She was more concerned about what the bridge, the first on San Francisco Bay Bridge, would do for freight trains than for passengers, who seemed to be treated as an afterthought in the article. Her attitude was not surprising when one takes into account that at the time most people worked near their homes. The important contribution of the new bridge was that it meant a new great savings of time and simplifies the handling of freight cars. There would be no need for what Colburn referred to as Trans-Bay freight boats. Now, the early years before 1910. A little history in this story. Freight trains dominated future business on Dumbarton Bridge, named for Dumbarton Point, the span's western terminus. From 1912 to at least 1918, however, there were passenger service. In addition, there were some trains made up of both freight and passenger cars. There are still some old Dumbarton passenger timetables around that show the trains ran from Newark to Redwood City, where passengers could transfer from San Francisco or San Jose. The optimistic Colburn forecast that electric trains would offer service every 10 minutes didn't happen. What Colburn didn't or couldn't see was that the future importance of automotive cars and trucks in just 10 years had a huge impact on railroads. In 1927, a two-lane vehicle bridge opened adjacent to the rail bridge. In 1982, a four-lane bridge took over. 2 years later, the center section of the 1927 bridge was demolished in a controlled explosion. The railroad bridge is only 5 miles long and has been out of service since the 1980s, when I started grade school. On January 2nd, 1998, a fire hit the abandoned structure at the scene had the last freight train roll over its tracks in 1982. The blades collapsed the western approach, but the span swinging section, which rotated to make way for boats, still stands left in the open position. A passage for boats. In the bridge's heyday, boaters would signal the bridge operator, who used a diesel engine to twist the section of vessels, so vessels could pass. There is also a much smaller freight bridge on that across Newark's Slough on the east side of the bay towards Fremont. About 100 yards of that single track span went up in flames in 2019, with repairing and getting the rail bridge in working order only in one part of the massive plan called the Dumbarton Rail Corridor Project, which totals 20.5 miles. The Bay Rail Alliance recommended that 3 new passenger rail stations should be built. Proposed service calls for 6 trains across the bridge during the morning commute and 6 trains during the evening. The morning train would originate at Union City across the bay, and then 3 trains would travel north to San Francisco. The 3 proceed south to San Jose along Caltrain tracks. All trains would reverse patterns and return to Union City at the end of the run. In the bridge's heyday, boaters would signal other service patterns and frequency wouldn't be possible in the future as the service gains popularity, the alliance said on its website. Ransom attack. Rinse and repeat. Here we go again. A hacker gang went on a crime spree this holiday weekend, looking up over 1 million devices and demanding over $70 million in bitcoins to release them. Cybersecurity experts are calling the spree unprecedented. The responsible group is called We Are Evil, like our evil. It has Russian ties, and it was the same group responsible for hacking the meat production company a few months ago. This time, the group targeted a software company called Kisa, or Kaisa, and asked for $45,000 per computer that was locked, rather than lump sum for the entire system. The group also targeted the Swedish grocery chain Coop. Biden says President Biden says he has directed the full resources of government to investigate. High-speed rail misses out on California's massive budget surplus, but the rail train is getting back nearly $1 billion in federal funding. We'll see. Governor Gavin Newsom spent the past week promoting a long list of new spending proposals made possible by the record-smashing budget surplus, but the state's embattled bullet train is missing out. While the main budget revisions from last year, Newsom rolled out on Friday calls for giving the California High-Speed Rail Authority $4.2 billion to build the first segment of the system in Central Valley. That proposal does not represent new state funding for the project. Instead, the money would come out of the bond voters approved for in 2008 to start the high-speed rail system that promised to eventually take riders from San Francisco to Los Angeles, tapping funds that were already raised to pay for the project. That differs from a proposal several leaders of the state legislature have made to divert the bond money to the other public transit projects, which they argue would provide more immediate benefits. Still, even with a surplus of more than $100 billion to spread around the state, Newsom totally chose not to take any new commitments to the high-speed rail project, which will need to come up with tens of billions of dollars if it's ever going to reach the Bay Area or Los Angeles. Google searches for sound is final okay to launch major downtown transformation. The Governor Harley skimped on infrastructure spending. His budget revision adds $6.8 billion for other transportation needs, including $1.1 billion projects related to the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, $1 billion for other priority transit rail projects, and $2 billion for improvement to highways, roads, bridges across the state. And with pretty glaring omission, said Ethan Elkine, the director of the climate program at UC Berkeley Center for Law, Energy, and Environment, but also a reflection of the political realities in the legislature and where public opinion is at. High-speed rail had become a popular target for Republicans and seeing its support among voters falter after years of ballooning costs. I recall election Newsom is facing later this year, which obviously he won. Elkine said it gives him all the incentive to do things that are politically popular and stay away from things that may be ultimately beneficial to the state but are not politically popular at the moment. There was better news for the bullet train from the federal government. Newsom announced in his speech rolling out the updated budget proposal Friday. The federal transportation officials under Biden administration have agreed to restore $929 million for the funding for the high-speed rail project that their predecessors in the Trump administration revoked in 2019. Quote, those dollars are coming back to the state, Newsom said. Quote, we have a real federal partner in our high-speed rail system and an incredible opportunity to finish the work in the Central Valley and then build out those extensions into the Bay Area and down to Southern California. In a recent statement, Federal Railroad Administration Deputy Administrator Emmett Bose stopped short of confirming an agreement to restore the project's funding, but said negotiations have been productive and praised high-speed rail as a pioneering project. Crews are now building the first 119-mile second-mile project, which runs from Madeira to just north of Bakersfield. The rail authority officials say they can add more than 52 miles of track and launch passenger service by the end of the decade, if they're allowed to use $4.2 billion approved in 2000's Proposition 1A. Quote, our objective right now is to complete 119 miles in the Central Valley and get trains running as soon as possible. Authority spokesman Melissa Figueroa wrote in an email statement about Newsom's budget proposal Friday. With the allocation of the remaining bond funds, we'll be able to do that, keeping men and women working in the Central Valley. Meanwhile, the authority had been planning for bookend sections of the system that will extend the Central Valley into the Bay Area and Los Angeles, even though it doesn't have the money to build it. Those projects will require carving routes through remote mountain ranges, like Amtrak, example, which I took last year to San Diego, and cores of bustling cities will require a massive infusion of funding. After years of cost increases, the total price tag for San Francisco to Los Angeles service would be as high as $100 billion. While Newsom's budget did not provide that money, backers of the project hoped the $2.3 trillion stimulus President Biden has proposed, which would include $80 billion for new rail projects. With continued partnership from the federal government, Figueroa will, quote, we will work to apply for additional federal dollars that may be allocated to this project to help us complete the full 500 mile system. So next one is, how is that for optimism? Perhaps Colburn wasn't too far off track in 1910. So anyway, next one is breaking it is hard to do. So in this story, they're talking about the icebergs, like in Alaska. So a new iceberg has been broken away from the edge of the Antarctica and is now the world's largest iceberg afloat in the world. The berg is called A-76 and was confirmed by the European Space Agency via satellite images. It is bigger than the space island Majorca, Majorca. The breakaway is not being blamed on the climate emergency, according to Reuters. Periodic counting of large chunks of those shelves is part of a natural cycle, and the breaking off of A-76, which is likely to split into 2 or 3 pieces soon, is not linked to climate change. Ted Scavos, a research geocyclist at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Struggling to go away. So what's hiding in the water tower? So this book definitely goes through that. USA Today looked at water towers around America and found that some of them had not been cleaned out since they were built 50 years ago. Some of them are host to dead rodent snakes, mice, raccoons. Others had pigeon and other animal well, you know, these are the these are the receptacles supposedly delivering clean water, clean drinking water and bathing water to U.S. homes. Experts say that the diseases related to these water towers contribute to many as 1,000 deaths per year. There are no federal regulations for water tank maintenance, and each state has its own rules about inspection and cleaning. According to USA Today, some have no rules whatsoever, and it shows. Quote, of the 41 states that responded to the survey, 37 require visual inspections of the outside of the water tanks and towers, but only 9, 22%, required interior inspection needed to check for a sediment buildup or if animal carcasses have contaminated the supply. The Environmental Protection Agency has known about this problem since at least 2002. But has yet to create any rules or solutions. The agency is just now considering making rules, but they will be in place until 2027. Scabos does not expect A-76 to raise ocean levels. In today's lead story, the shrinking infrastructure stimulus. The president has come down on his opening bid for his infrastructure bill, lowering the price tag by $600 billion. The original proposal would cost $2.3 trillion. The new proposal will cost $1.7 trillion. Minor update on that. I heard earlier that they're trying to make it $2 trillion. Is what they're trying to make it. So we'll see if it gets there. This was the result of talks with Republican leaders who are spelling out what it will take to get them to vote in favor of the bill. Sorry, I need that. In order to lower the cost, the president's team agreed to lower funding for rural broadband and reduce spending on road and bridge and major infrastructure projects. We will also move funding for research and development and supply chain improvements over to a different bill. Republicans did not jump for joy after the concession. The president lowered the price tag by about $600 billion, but even that is more than the Republicans want to spend. Their infrastructure proposal costs less than the $568 billion proposed. Did I do that twice? Sorry, I just want to say something real quick. Kind of really saying. All right. So another one. Biden's $6 trillion dollar budget. Oh, so there's two different. Got it. Sorry, I really haven't proofread this. I just put when I did it, I put it together. So this one is his version, $6 trillion budget. President Bush will. Okay, sorry. President Biden April releases budget proposal for 2022. Today, it is expected to total $6 trillion. That is an increase of $5.7 trillion spent in 2021. The plan will include the President's infrastructure bill, which is not a sure thing as lawmakers continue to negotiate the plan. It also accounts for the President's tax increases, which are also still in negotiation stages. New Year's budget could be considered a spending spree, which the administration sees as a necessary investment, according to Wall Street Journal. It said, quote, would put the nations on a path to spend $8.2 trillion annually by the end of 2031. By this time, debt would exceed the record level seen at the end of World War II within a few years, and reach 11.7% economic output by the end of 2031, and up from 100% this year. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that all of this spending is temporary and necessary. She called it a fiscally responsible program. That the plan is for the country to borrow what it intends to spend in order to foster growth over the long term. Don't expect Congress to pave the way for the president's plan. Congress will likely put their own plan, as they have to pass it with bipartisan support. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me check something. The next story is on gas prices. So if you're taking a road trip this holiday weekend, so anyways, if you're taking a road trip this holiday weekend, expect to pay at the pump. Gas prices are the highest they've ever been on a Memorial weekend since 2014. The average price per gallon at the time was $300.04, which is 16 cents higher than the last month of 1.08 higher for April than at the same time last year. High prices are still partly due to the Colonial Pipeline shutdown when the supply chain disrupted. They are also due to a sudden increase in demand, more than 60% more than road travel this holiday than last year when the world was still shut down. That is 37 million Americans on the roads. Experts think gas prices will remain high all summer, hovering about $3 per gallon for the foreseeable future. Free healthcare. If you received unemployment during 2021, you qualify for free healthcare under healthcare.gov until the end of the year. That was in the stimulus package that President Biden signed into law in March. The same that sent out 1,400 payments and payments to person. Now, since that's stimulus, we will talk a little bit about stimulus. So there is a couple of bills in Congress right now that there's a highly chance that we'll get another stimulus check out of Congress. Where there's the 1,400 or the $2,000 one time, $2,000 recurring. Me being optimistic, lower optimistic, I would say it's 1,400 one time. And then have them go back and do 2,000 as a recurring, like they were supposed to do in the beginning. But money is money. So if we get the monthly, yay! If we get the one time, that's still good, right? And anyone who has qualified for unemployment at any point in this year can sign up for a silver dollar plan, meaning middle of the road type coverage, and the premium will be $0 per month compared to $450 per month that these plans usually cost. Enrollment for this began on July 1st will continue through August 15th. Earth warming faster than expected. The planet may push right past its initial goal for the Paris Climate Agreement in the next few years. Scientists say that there is a 90% chance that the world will heat up faster than anticipated due to climate emergency. The 2015 Global Agreement set a goal of keeping the increase in global temperatures to a few tenths of a degree warmer. The World Meteorological Organization predicts that the northern hemisphere will be at 1.86 degrees hotter than just in 5 years ago. The same report says that the drought in the southwest will also continue. Experts say that the Colorado River has hit its lowest water level and is not expected to recover throughout next year. Last year, the same group put out this grim forecast at a 20% chance of happening. So what has made this so much worse in just a year? The group said the new technology shows that the planet is already warmer than we had previously thought. President Biden suspended the oil leases that gave drilling rights to companies in the Antarctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. These had been granted under former President Trump despite protests of environmentalists and a majority of Alaskan residents. Near the end of the Trump administration, businesses were working to secure their contracts quickly in anticipation of this. The former president commissioned a study showing that the effects of drilling in this region would be negligible. But new research does not support that conclusion. President Biden's freeze is not the end of this. The Interior Department will complete a comprehensive analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act, which would ultimately lead to the leases being voided altogether, according to the Wall Street Journal. President Biden also made moves to stop Republican efforts to change voting rules around the country. He tasked Vice President Harris with the job of fighting this fight. Quote, in the last election, more people voted more than ever. Since then, more than 380 bills have been introduced across the country and that would have made it harder for Americans to vote, Harris said in a statement. But these are state bills. What can she do as a federal official? Well, she can litigate them or introduce them introduce federal laws to prevent them. Scorched earth. Farmers in California are ripping out almond trees to deal with the worsening drought. Almonds are some of the most water-demanding crops, and with lower water levels and supply restrictions, farmers simply cannot keep up. The federal government has cut water deliveries to half the state because they just don't have it to send. A drought monitor says that 26% of the state is in exceptional drought, which is the worst category. Another half is in extreme drought, and the rest of the state is in regular drought. Upcoming heat waves will not help an already dire situation. One water manager told the Wall Street Journal that they need 39 days to 39 nights of rain, which is extremely unlikely. Some farmers have turned to private water sellers to feed their crops at quadruple the price. California grows 80% of its almonds sold in the U.S. The drought has also hurt crops of tomatoes, alfalfa, wheat, and other commodities. One researcher is hoping the solar panels can help prevent a solution to the state's problem. She found that putting panels over the state's water canals can help reduce evaporation and generate more clean energy. She estimates that this could save 65 billion gallons of water each year. And this is really old, but at the time it was current. VTA to get 20 million from state after sounds a mass shooting. State lawmakers are set to give $20 million to VTA to help it recover from the deadliest shooting in the Bay Area history. The funding is included in the state budget and will allow transportation agency to provide mental health resources to employees and their families, resume light rail service, and improve safety upgrades at one Lubin rail yard in downtown San Jose. State Senator Dave Cortez said at a news conference on Monday, quote, "Having served on the board for 17 years, this has hit close to home for me." Cortez said, "I want to thank Governor Newsom and the state Senate leadership for recognizing the urgent need for taking action." The additional funding proposed by Cortez came late in the budget process and after 9 PTA workers were gunned down by another employee at the rail yard in late May. Nearly 100 workers witnessed the shooting, and many are still struggling to find resources, Cortez said. The state funding will go directly go to VTA and how to decide how to spend between personal needs and capital projects, Cortez said. In related stories, Silicon Valley Transit Agency publicizes dispute over alleged debt. A great worker sounded shooter praised by VTA managers. VTA workers face fear, frustration in the wake of Sunday's shooting. The Santa Clara County Sheriff released his body cam footage from VTA shooting. This immediate injection of resources to keep the train running and to make sure we're able to help workers get through this very difficult time is a great sense of comfort for all of us. Assembly member Asha Khan said in a news conference, as workers are still reeling from the shooting and with light rail service suspended indefinitely, the funding will address damage at the rail yard and make sure buildings are safe for workers to return. The ATU Local 265 President John Courtney said Monday, VTA will also implement more safety trainings. One of the biggest pieces of the Bring Light Rail back is her mental condition, Courtney said. Quote, "These families are very scared and afraid, but we absolutely have to let them know that there was a process in place and to take care of all family members as and all the grieving families. It is still unclear when light rail will use in operation, for instead of building the equipment and computers necessary to the service was damaged during the shooting. BTA is also considering demolishing the building where the shooting happened, said Santa Clara County Supervisor BTA board member Cindy Chavez, adding that there were existing safety concerns with the facility. The Guadalupe Rail Yard has been home to BTA's light rail maintenance service and equipment since 1987. About 379 BTA employees worked from there prior to the shooting. Quote, this is a very important location, and so making sure the location is hardened and protected long term is going to be very important so that employees feel safe going back to work. Chavez said, adding that the plan will need additional funding from the state. The $20 million state funding is split from two bills. One will go into the Senate floor, one will go through the Assembly before reaching the governor's desk. Quote, without the support, it could have had put BTA in a position of having to reprioritize, Chavez says, of the agency's suffering budget. Now we can prioritize our employees and the future of BTA, and frankly, in my perspective, came back better than ever. State lawmakers are set to give okay, so this is a Uber story, which I thought was kind of cute. So the byline says, Uber, she just graduated from high school, and she said her Uber passenger made it possible. Is that her? Okay, so Latonya Young, a 44-year-old single woman of three, received a bachelor's degree last week. It was a lifelong goal, and she credits one of her Uber passengers with making it possible. She met the passenger 3 years ago when she pulled him over in downtown Atlanta to pick him up. Kevin, calls it Etch, who came from Atlanta, United Soccer game, got into her car. The two started chatting. Quote, the conversation was easy and felt authentic, says Etch, 45 years old. He shared details about his recent divorce and Young, whose marriage ended in 2011, offered advice. During the half-hour ride to Etch's home, he learned that Young, who had been an Uber driver for 3 years, was working late night. That because she needed money to pay for the utility bill. And he learned something else. Young wanted to be the first member of her family to graduate from college. Although Young started taking classes at Georgia State University in 2010, she dropped out a year later because she couldn't pay tuition. Once they arrived at the home, the estate manager tipped Young $150, enough to cover the utility bill, and gave her his phone number. Quote, she promised me that she would go back to school, he said, adding that he asked her to keep him informed throughout the enrollment process. It was the start of an unexpected Uber driver friendship. After the ride, quote, I had my mind made up that I wanted to go back to school, she said. He motivated me. Young, check in weekly, and have remained friends over the past 3 years. But a few weeks later, when Young tried to re-enroll at Georgia State, she was told that she wasn't permitted to register until her balance from 8 years ago, 8 years earlier, was paid in full. She owed $693, a sum that she couldn't afford. When she told X about her financial hole, he immediately went to the university without Young's knowledge and paid off her debt. Quote, I didn't want that to be a roadblock because it was something that I could change. I was in a place to be able to do it, and it was the right thing to do. Young never imagined that the Uber passenger was of all people would give her the financial and emotional push she needed to go forward. Quote, I'm in shock, Young said. The person barely knew me and yet he wanted to help me. She vowed to pay him back, but in his response was, pay me back by graduating. Young, a single mother of 3 sons, dreamed of becoming the first member of her family to graduate college. Young is grateful, she said, after years of working multiple jobs, putting off her education. When she got pregnant at 16 with her oldest son, she dropped out of high school and eventually received her GED. As time wore on, but her desire to go back to school never waned, even though it seemed out of reach. Quote, it was like I was stuck inside a box and couldn't get out. I was just trying to do whatever. I had to take care of my kids, Young said, adding that she was also in a car accident in 2015, which further set her back financially. Every time Young saved enough money to pay off the balance and re-enroll in classes, some things would come up. My kids, they need stuff. I put education on hold to take care of my family, she said. After meeting Ed, though, I felt it was time for me to do something for myself and to set an example for my kids, Young said. Plus, she added, I wanted to remain a woman of my word and do exactly what I told Kevin I was going to do. She re-enrolled in classes in December 2019. Young received her associate degree in criminal justice from Georgia Star's Perimeter College. Edge was there on graduation day, cheering on cheering her on in the stands. Edge attended Young's graduation in December 2019 when she learned her associate's degree in criminal justice was from Georgia State's Premature College. It meant everything to me, and Kevin was there, said Young, who often leaned on him for mentoring and advice. It was a good feeling. Damn, 286. Still, I knew I wasn't finished, she said. Getting a bachelor's degree was her ultimate goal, so I went straight ahead. Not only was I aiming for that, but I was aiming to raise my GPA as much as I could before I graduated. Young continued with her studies while working part-time as a substitute teacher as well as a hairstylist. She also received support from the Jeanette Rankin's Women's Scholarship Fund, which offers financial aid to low-income women older than 35 pursuing post-secondary education. Etch is now a member of the organization after Karen Sturk, a chief operating officer for the charity, heard about his friendship with Young and thought he'd be a perfect fit. Quote, it's just so inspiring and touching, she said, for their friendship. Young, as well as many other women in similar situations, deserve to make a life instead of just making a living. We're giving them an extra boost to push across the finish line, Sturk said. Since 1971, the organization has helped more than 1,500 or 300 American women earn post-secondary degree, according to the founders' website. In Young's case, the financial assistance was deeply appreciated. Quote, the funding helped me get through the hardship, Young said, adding that it was often difficult to manage being a single mother while working two jobs and keeping up on the classes. Her experience is uncommon, but Nancy Croft, the dean of Premature College, she said Young's story of going to college later in life put into focus that we have to take every seriously who our students are, and responsibility of that we have. Despite the challenges, though, Young when Young's name was called, and it was just pure pride that said, I'm proud of that she followed through with what she said would do her difference. Reaching her goal was a surreal feeling, said Young, who also successfully raised her GPA from a 2.9 to 3.5. Yeah. By the time she graduated, I'm very proud of my achievement. She called it a double graduation since she recently secured a new apartment for her family and left public housing after 12 years. Young is applying for a full-time job in criminal justice. She also spent the past 2 years writing a book called From Broken to Blessed, which is due June 7th of 2021. The book tells her life story and how one Uber driver The book tells a life story and how not overdrive unexpectedly changed everything. Quote, I don't know what situation would it would be if I hadn't met Kevin. Young said, I hope it's his kindness inspires other people to do the same. Sorry, I got a hearing right under me. No matter how her future unfolds, she said, I gained a dear friend through all of this. So, in this one, I've done a little movie thing. So, Timothy Chalamet is headed to land of pure imagination as the Academy Award nominated actor, has been cast as young Willy Wonka in a new origin story from Warner Bros. And the Ron Dahl Company, according to Deadline. While the film is based upon the character originally created by Ron Dahl in his novel, that has also inspired the 1971 film from Mel Stewart. This one will focus on a young Willy Wonka before before he opened his famed chocolate factory. Warner Brothers confirmed to IndieWire a release date is currently unset for March 17, 2023. The film will be directed by Paul King, the director of Paddington and Paddington 2. And I forget how much they go about. It was awesome. And the screenplay he wrote with Simon Farmby, picking up from the prior writers, including Simon Rich, Simon Stevenson, Jeff Nathanson, and Stephen Levinson. Farnaby previously wrote the screenplay for Paddington 2. David Hainsman was producing via his Heyday films. Luke Kelly is also producing with Michael Siegel and Alexandra Derbyshire executive producing. This latest revamp of Williams' the story will mark the third time Warner Bros. Has adapted Ron Dahl novel Charlie and Charlie's Factory from the big screen original 1971. The movie starred Gene Wilder as the beloved chocolatier. Then there was the 2005 version of Charlie and Chocolate Factory, directed by Tim Burton, starring Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka. Per the Deadline story, Charlie Bucket will not be featured in this latest version from director Paul King. However, it is reported that Coma will get to show off his singing and dancing skills in the various musical numbers featured throughout the film. He has been the top choice for some time, but scheduling was hurdle that the hurdle that had to be overcome as training for those numbers is included in the prep of this film, according to Deadline. Kama is coming up on a big fall thanks to the long-awaited arrival of Dennis villainous sorry, done in the theaters and on HBO Max this coming October. He also stars in Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch, which is rumored to be premiering at the Cannes Films Festival in July, which will release later this year for Screenlight Pictures. He also has a role in Adam McKay's film Look Up over at Netflix. He is also set to reunite with Call Me by Your Name director Luca Guadagnino for his new film, Bones, and all opposite Taylor Russell. Alright, so for as far as you know, okay, I'm gonna repeat it. Fan me, like me. If I ever get a sub button, definitely sub me. Check me out on you now. Hashtag you now. Hashtag OAMEGO_52609. I'm already at 500 something fans. And I need to get back to my 1.1 point, at least 1.2, because that's where I was on one of the main accounts. And I actually was almost at my 3rd crown, so I definitely need to regain my 3rd crown plus my fans for it. And I do try to broadcast every night, and generally I usually just do 6 squad, which is easier. It's for me and timing. So if I'm not in stream, don't worry. I'll shout you out if I'm there, or if you leave me a message in my on my wall. Okay, this. Okay, I'm not doing that. Sorry. Alright, so this is the end of this current vlog. If you like what you heard, sorry if I stumbled along words. I just don't like to read all this stuff. If you like this video, please sub me. I'm at 31. The last person to sub me, thank you for subbing me. I appreciate it. I love you. Definitely, if you have supporters in your own YouTube, sub them. Please sub them. More subs you get, that means more viewers get to see your YouTube channels. But as always, like, share, fan, sub, as in moving now kind of thing. Alright? And I'll see you in the next video.